Hi, I'm David Marks. Welcome to my shop here in Northern California. There's 3 woodworking hand tools that I'd like to introduce you to today. All these tools are scrapers. They're all very inexpensive and relatively easy to use once you learn how to sharpen these. This one's called a card scraper. It's basically a thin piece of metal, and after this edge has been honed and with a burr drawn on here, you can use this to smooth the surface. You can also use this for shaping. And this is basically a great tool for preparing the wood for finishing. This other one is called a gooseneck scraper. Now this one is great for any type of a curved surface. I like to use this on chair seats, curved moldings, anything that has like a carved or curved shape to it. This last one's the good old number 80 cabinet scraper. This one's very similar to a hand plane in that it has a flat sole. So this one's good for flattening the wood. It also has a thumb screw back here, so this one allows you to take some more aggressive cuts. Now, like I said, all these tools are very inexpensive and they're relatively easy to use once you learn how to sharpen them. Over the years, a lot of my students have asked me, how am I able to get my scrapers to produce such fine shavings? So I'm going to show you here today how to sharpen these scrapers so that you can produce shavings like this in your own shop, and I'll go through the process step by step. The first step to sharpening the card scraper is to file this with a file. Now I'm using a single cut mill bastard file. They wouldn't let me say that on TV. Actually, they finally did let me say that, but they didn't like that word bastard because they said, you know, little kids might be watching. But that's what it says here on the file. It's a mill bastard file. It's a single cut. And what I want to do is to draw this across the edge of the scraper. And I'm using my fingers as sort of a bearing surface here. And the goal is just to flatten that edge. After I've made a few draw passes across that, what I want to do is to take a straight edge and just check and see if I've got a straight edge there. And now we have a straight edge, we can move on to the honing process. Our next step will be to hone the scrapers. So let's talk for a minute about various honing systems that are on the market. Now, a lot of guys prefer the traditional Arkansas stones. I have some friends that like to use sandpaper on a piece of glass. For my own methods, I like to use the Japanese water stones. Now, I was very fortunate to study with a master craftsman from Japan named Makoto Mai back in 1984. Makoto trained me to work on the traditional Japanese water stones. And this is what I feel are going to give you the most accurate performance. I have several different brands here, and I'm going to talk about these for you. This is the King brand. This is the 800 grit, which I would recommend as the coarse stone. This is also a King stone here. This is the 1200 grit, which I would recommend as the intermediate stone. And this one here is the 6000 grit, also the King brand, which I would recommend as the final finishing stone. Now, if you wanted to step up a little bit, spend a little bit more money, you could go to the Norton stones. This is a Norton 8000 grit. The Nortons are a little bit harder than the King brands, so they should work pretty well for you. Now, over the years, I've gotten introduced to and accustomed to working with the Shapton brands. The Shapton are a new ceramic hybrid, so it's a hybrid of ceramic plus the water stones. These things are a really great stone. They're very, very hard, so they stay flat longer. And let me talk about the various grits. This one's the 1000 grit. I would recommend this as your coarse stone for the initial honing. This one's the 5000 grit, which I would recommend as the intermediate stone. And this one here is the 8000 grit, which I would use as my polishing stone. Now, with all these stones, they have to be flattened. So over here, I have a piece of granite. This is something that I got from a company that makes tombstones. And it's guaranteed flat plus or minus within 5/1000ths of an inch. I start out by wetting the surface with some water. Take a piece of 320 grit sandpaper. You could drop down to 220 and wet the back of the paper, wet the front of it. Set this down onto the piece of granite, and then I would take the stone and work this back and forth in a diagonal motion.